And as we leave the moon, we leave as we came, and God willing, as we shall return.
And welcome to the first Artemis Podcast. Here joining me on the air is Woog, say hello,
Hello.
and Mr. Fu.
Hey, how's it going?
Okay, and we have two more people here in the audience who are just here to listen. Where do we really start? We had core stage rollout this week. We had the Pegasus barge actually make its way to Stennis. I believe it's still on its way there as we speak. What do we think about green run testing?
Even though it pushes back the launch date a bit, I think it's pretty critical.
Definitely, and they said that in the tweet by Bridenstine, it was a few months ago, that they mentioned that we need to search for problems now in the green run test before we find them sometime later in a potential abort in an Artemis 2 or 3 mission down the line, which would be devastating to the program.
Yeah, I kind of think that there are two ways of looking at it. Like what Curb's saying is it's kind of a waste of time, but which I partially agree with because these are such tried and true engine platforms that it just kind of seems like an unnecessary step. I mean, I know it is one more way of certifying the vehicle for its first launch, but they're so comfortable with those engines that it just seems kind of odd to me.
Definitely, and
I don't
recall
think,
that they have how many engines? Like 12 in storage from the space shuttle program that ended in 2000 and what was it, 11? And
Hmm.
they've flown on countless flights over and over again. It's just, I think the argument there from a lot of the workers, from their point of view, is that we have all this new propellant systems that we need to verify, and even though we do the testing, you really don't know until you fire it up on the B2 stand.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, I think it is kind of a bummer that it's pushing back the timeline a bit, but in the essence of being safe, it makes sense. It's also just, I guess there's just two ways of looking at it, and I guess it's better to be safe than sorry in the long run.
Yeah, what they said, I think we had like some guy on the SLS Reddit, was it, who said that Green Run, like the actual hot fire, was gonna happen around like late July and August. Actually, like it's almost there right now. We're just waiting for the confirmation, and then they're gonna load it onto the stand sometime early this week, I believe. Is the consensus? Not a lot of word
Uh,
from NASA's side at the moment.
We've got a question about the space shuttle being able to fly to the moon. No, it never would have had that capability unless there
Yeah.
were some way to add additional fuel once it was already up in orbit. That orange tank is where it pulled all of its fuel from its ascent stage. So as soon as that was gone and they dumped that, there was not enough fuel in the shuttle to do anything other than deorbit.
Yeah. What was the dry mass of the shuttle like once it was in orbit?
I'm not sure. Let me see.
It was at least like 20 tons, I think, and you have all those tiles and everything that you have to carry up there too.
This is saying dry mass of 172,000 pounds.
Yeah. And then they had to carry some payloads too to try and use it better.
I'm seeing some conflicting information, but that sounds about right.
Yeah.
Probably varied based on shuttle. Though they were all similar, they were all different on the way that they were actually constructed and how their wires were run, and so there's probably some discrepancy between which actual shuttle you're talking about.
Woo, do we have any insider information? What's the latest on that with Green Run? Because we're not getting any scheduling on our end.
guess he's not either.
I guess so. I mean, we do have we've had someone we've been in contact with at MAF, the place where they make the actual core stage, and they actually said yesterday that they would be shipping the barge this morning, and you can see in that image posted on the NASA subreddit right there. It's up right now. You can see them with the tugs. They were pulling it out of the canal early this morning, and they're almost there, like we said. And then they had the heat shield for the Artemis 2 right there, the mission.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't gotten many looks at the actual like pressurized module. What's up with that?
I don't think we've gotten any pictures of it since September.
Yeah, and then like I think the ESD from October, they really neglected the whole Artemis 2 thing and the whole Green Run thing. They had a Green Run slide, but they didn't have any schedule on it because they were still trying to work out their directorate, I think, for the program. There was some issue with management.
I'm looking through that PDF that you sent, Curb. It's pretty interesting.
Oh, he has a PDF up right now. Let me take a look at that. Oh yeah, the whole space shuttle. In terms of their astronauts, who's on that list? I didn't really pay much attention, but we have, what was it, 12 people that are now on the roster that could go to, like, they said the International Space Station and the Artemis missions to the Moon and Mars.
It's actually 13.
13, yeah. When do you think they'll be picking, like, the crew out of those for the Artemis 2 mission? Because we know it's scheduled for sometime in late 2022, they said. I believe was the latest. There's not much word on that.
Last I've heard, it's sometime in September 2022 or April 2023, depending on, I think they'll pick a crew in, like, mid to late 2020, and they'll, like, pick, like, the Artemis 2 and 3 crews. The Artemis 3 crew will probably help in the development of the human landing system, a bit similar to how the commercial crews help with the development of those vehicles.
And Woog, let me just put you up a bit on volume because you're a little quiet here, but the whole delays for the program actually wouldn't really affect the Artemis 3 deadline of 2024 for the first woman and next man on the moon, because a lot of that architecture would be Gateway, correct? And we don't really have much on Gateway right now. It's in early stages of development, but hopefully we get word on that. You mentioned we had some Government Accountability Office document on the whole human landing system.
It wasn't specifically about the human landing system. It was more on the entire Artemis program. It brought up that NASA plans on picking one or more contractors for the human landing system by January, although that looks like March right now. And
Yeah, they keep pushing it
going
back.
off more recent information, it looks like they're going to do like some 10-month study with new contractors until they pick the final design in late 2020 or early 2021.
Yeah, and they released the Appendix H, was it? With all the details on what you should design the lander for and what it should be able to do. It's like, close to a month on the moon, was it, that they want to eventually get to?
Is the intent that they're going to do like an automated test run on one of those landers at the moon, or are they going to basically do what they did with Apollo and just kind of put all your eggs in one basket and hope it works?
My money is that they're not going to be doing a test run. We haven't heard anything of a test run as far as we know. Even though like Bridenstine likes to make the claim that Artemis is the number one safest approach to the moon or whatever, it probably won't be able to. If you think about it, the gateway will be up and running with like at most maybe a year of leeway, of like cushion, and then you gotta send up two landers, and each of those landers has a three-stage approach with the descent stage, the orbit stage, and the ascent stage. So you gotta send 6 modules of that up there in like the span of
Uh,
7
the
months.
the three-stage approach is like the baseline. Companies can do with simpler designs or
Yeah,
even
that's what they
reusable
said.
designs if that works out.
Yeah, they mentioned that in the document. They said they could be taking like 2-stage designs. I'm pretty sure a 1-stage design would be really out of the question because of the cost, and delta V would just be enormous for a single launch.
SSTO.
Yeah, pretty much. And the landers, they aren't cheap in terms of fuel either. You need a lot of delta V to get into lunar orbit. Even though it's 1/6 of the gravity on Earth, it's like at least a kilometer per second, like each way.
So uh, I think the reason why they picked Marshall out of all places to lead the program is since the base design of the human landing system has 3 stages. 2 of those are propulsion based, and Marshall has a lot of experience with propulsion.
hmm They said that I think it was Berger that wrote the argument, or someone else wrote the argument a while back that like adding more stages and more elements would simply just make it more complex and dangerous compared to Apollo. They brought that up during the congressional hearing several months ago. Yeah, we'll take questions right now. If you have questions in Mikeless people, the rest of the members of the Artemis server, there's there's about 130 of us actually. We'll link that later.
How fast does a shuttle travel and at what altitude? Um, so the whole premise of the shuttle is low Earth orbit, right? So it's going to match the same capabilities as virtually any other orbital class payload delivery system, getting to basically the altitude of the ISS and also matching that velocity at that particular altitude. So you could basically go across the board, and those type of stats on launch vehicles are not necessarily as pertinent as some of the other stuff that seems more boring. Because again, if you're getting to that altitude, you're going that same speed as everything else that got to the same altitude in that orbit. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it's like I don't know. It really depends on the whole thrust to weight too, because the
Mm-hmm.
Saturn V, one of the reasons why it was so big was because the thrust to weight at launch was like just over 1, and it was lumbering off
Yeah,
the
it's
pad.
like painfully slow leaving
Yeah,
the pad. It looks like slow motion when you watch some of that footage. And you're like,
yeah,
is it
it
gonna
does.
go?
It's like 10 seconds to clear the tower roughly, and what is it with SLS, like 5?
Actually, this kind of reminds me when I went and saw Colonel Wheelock, an Army astronaut who did a talk to about 20 of
Mhm.
us a couple months ago. He was talking about the differences in his experiences. He went up on one mission with a shuttle, and he went up on a mission on a Soyuz, and he was talking about the differences of ascent and descent from those two different vehicles. Though they're accomplishing essentially the same thing for what they were doing, getting the crew up to the ISS. He said the space shuttle is a very unpleasant experience when it launches because you have those SRBs that are immediately pushing you back into your
Mhm.
seat. So you're getting those G forces instantaneously. Um, but the contrary to that is on its way down. He said it was absolutely like butter. You barely felt anything, maybe some slight um, some slight vibrations in the craft as it's coming down, but because of its shallow approach as it was coming through the atmosphere and the fact that it turned into a glide vehicle at lower altitudes, it was super smooth. And he said that it was exactly the opposite on the Soyuz. So the Soyuz, having just liquid engine propellant or liquid propellant engines, it was very smooth and gradual with the G-forces on launch, but then coming in, that thing was just absolutely nuts. Everything's going crazy. Everything had to be tied down inside the capsule, or else it was going to fly around all over the place. It was interesting that essentially, yeah, they're doing the same thing. They're getting to the ISS, but it's very different experiences based on what type of engines and propellants they're using.
Yeah. What was the glide ratio? Like 1-4 on the shuttles?
I'm not sure. Let me see if I can.
I think it was 1-4, and like even then, people were talking about how when they were landing it, they had to turn from left to right to bleed off altitude.
Oh yeah, the S curves to bleed off speed. Yeah.
It was just like they were going so fast that if they just kept going straight, they would overshoot it by like several hundred miles.
Yeah. So the lift to drag ratios varied to the shuttle. It was 1-to-1 at hypersonic speeds, 2-to-1 at supersonic, and then at subsonic speeds, yeah, it was 4.5-to-1.
Yeah, it's really bad glide ratio because they didn't want to overshoot it, and then they would have to slow it down with parachutes because they weren't getting enough drag with those wings on the side, so they had to deploy the parachutes on like the 3-mile long runway they had at the landing facility.
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah, I mean, it's too bad they canceled it.
Yeah, it was a great craft, and it did more than they thought it was going to do, and they actually got it operational. But it also never really fully lived up to the expectations of how it was on the drawing board.
Definitely. They said what, like a launch every. It was more than what they were actually launching it at. They were planning to really just pump it out of the VAB as fast as they could and launch it, but it really failed their expectations miserably, and then they had 2 of them blow up during flight.
Yep. Which is really frustrating because none of that was actually on the vehicle itself. It all boils down to administration and how they were managing things being checked. It's sad because the craft itself was extremely reliable. And yeah, with Challenger, you had one of those seals that technically was a failure of the equipment, but it could have been prevented given the fact that even the engineers that worked on those were saying, hey, we don't trust these temperatures. And again, administration decided to push forward because of the publicity that they were with Krista McAuliffe that was on the flight. And
they had to get their whole public outreach program, which they really, I don't see a lot of it nowadays. You don't see a lot of public outreach with the whole Artemis program.
Yeah, a lot of people have no idea that it's actually going on.
Yeah, and then you have people that get invested in SpaceX, and they're completely oblivious that this whole thing is happening. Or if they hear about it, it's like it's pretty secretive the way they're keeping things like under wraps. With the whole core stage thing, we were getting like one picture every month or so.
What makes me sad is I think a lot of that has to do with there are so many people that are critical of money and how it's being spent at the government level that I see it all the time. People always complaining, well, why are we spending money on space endeavors when there's people living in the streets and starving here? And there's a huge disconnect. People don't understand that every dollar that's spent on the space program, it's not just getting loaded into a capsule and launched into orbit and never coming back. All that money is being spent and part of the economy here on Earth. So, but people just look at it and they're saying, hey, so maybe NASA kind of looks at it as maybe keep their head low and then nobody questions where money's being spent, and then you don't have people writing their senators and congressmen and all this crap, which is sad that it's probably turning out that way.
Yeah, I think the figure was every dollar invested in NASA is $7 back into the economy. It's a lot.
Yeah, and in some ways even immeasurable based on the different technologies that are going to come out of it, and all the other companies that are going to start up to be contractors, and No, I don't have any mission patches. I haven't been utilizing any commercial or, uh, I guess, commercial or public type launch systems or anything, so I don't have any specific mission patches.
Yeah, they asked a question a couple minutes ago. Are the boosters for Artemis 1 done? Yes, they're done. They're in storage. They're actually transporting some of the nozzle pieces, like the aft exit cones. They're already at the Space Center, and they're in storage right now, I think. They're going to begin booster stacking sometime. I believe the projection right now is in the summer. It was this spring, but now we've had all these delays come up because we're just now starting to realize how much of of these little things for core stage are going to be pushing the critical path back for the launch, and now the launch is scheduled for like late springish 2021.
Does anyone know? So the SRBs are basically adapted versions of what they're using for the shuttle, but I know they're using a different type of propellant. Does anyone know what that looks like and why they made that change?
I'm not sure about the whole booster thing. I haven't looked into that. I know they're extended boosters from the shuttle, so they made them 5 segment boosters.
Yep. And they also ditched the parachute since they're not, because of how much faster they're going to be going when they separate. They're not planning on recovering those.
Mhm. Yeah,
But
I mean,
I just saw a little side note that said they're using a different propellant, and I was curious as to why they changed that, because I thought the shuttle boosters were like or the SRBs were kind of like the gold standard of SRBs in the industry.
mhm. And they really then when they did the transition from shuttle to Artemis, they had this little period in between where they did Journey to Mars and everything, and people like to say that they didn't take the teams from the shuttle that had the expertise and transition them to working on the program we know and are working towards today,
Hmm.
because they just all got fired or a lot of them left between that whatever was it 7 year period between the last STS flight and the announcement from Mike Pence last May. That's when they really started picking up the work with the contractors in Boeing, and they cranked out the core stage. They got it out just now, actually. So they've been working on final mate, hydrogen tank mate, all that stuff.
Yeah, it is interesting, all those personnel, and how many of them they had to seek out and maybe entice them to come back if they worked on the shuttle program,
Hmm.
and then they had left and gone and gotten jobs elsewhere. I wonder if there's any kind of like headhunting they did. Say, hey, we'll entice you with this salary or whatever if you come back and work for us on this program. Because I mean, like you said, that's a whole wealth of knowledge that you definitely don't want to let go to waste. Kind of like after the Saturn program ended, a lot of that stuff was lost in fires or purposely destroyed or just kind of
Hmm.
lost with the experience of personnel dying out or going elsewhere.
Yeah, and I remember in some of the NASA spaceflight articles they were writing about it. They had like 2 shifts coming in every day on like weekends and everything, working on core stage this year or these past few months. And they even had 3 shifts, I think, during rollout operations like 2 weeks ago.
Hmm.
They're really trying to work round the clock, even though they're facing all these potential delays in the program. They're trying to meet the 2024 deadline.
Yeah, and that kind of ties into what David was saying. He asked about how an explosion at the Green Run would affect the timeline. And I mean, it would be absolutely disastrous.
Yeah, no question
That
about it.
the fact that those engine systems and SLS is a continuation of the shuttle program essentially, in terms of propulsion capabilities. And so if that fails when they're already extremely confident in those engine systems, it would be absolutely devastating. It would beyond a shadow of a doubt push back that 2024 timeline. I don't see any way around it.
Yeah, they would have to take Core Stage 2 and do a green run with that, and then maybe redesign it if the whole thing doesn't work. I mean, Core Stage 2, they're already working on the system, so they might even have to like scrap that and use what the steel panels they have
Hmm.
for Core Stage 3 and put that in. That would be at least 2 or 3 years of delay.
Yeah, I mean, even an operational vehicle like shuttle, every time there was an incident, whether it was Challenger or Columbia, they were grounded for years. So,
It's a
I mean,
streamlined approach.
yeah,
And if they get like any problems or errors in their approach, they're going to have to completely redesign that and basically go back to the beginning.
yep. And you have that public scrutiny that we were talking about earlier. That
Hmm.
would be people would be very pissed if
Yep.
they start looking in the budget and then realizing like, hey, this
All these
you
billions of
guys
dollars.
somehow screwed up, and now it's going to cost more money. Or maybe they'd even just start saying, Congress might even start saying, hey, look at different options for launch vehicles because this is not working out.
Actually, we can pull up that which channel was that in plans and diagrams, I think. We could pull up the ESD update from a couple month ago, and they had the whole list of events in like chronological order for Green Run. They just didn't have a schedule on that. No, I'm gonna find that actually right now.
I'm trying to scroll up.
The next one's in like March, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite a delay. Because they just skipped the. They were supposed to do 3 of those every year, and they only did 2 last year. Okay, exploration systems development status. Yeah, almost all of the hardware is assembled, I think, except for like a few OGIV panels or the solar panels on Orion. They gotta go back on once they finish testing at Plumbrook and ship it back sometime in March, I think.
So, Jim Mohard, yeah, he was at the Rolla event. He said that Core Stage 2 is being targeted to be completed by March 2022.
By March, so they still gotta get that plumbing done at the bottom of the hydrogen tank where they gotta connect the feed lines from the hydrogen tank to the engines, and then close out the stage on the stand. Crew module adapter for Artemis 2, it says, ready to mate with the European service module, May 2020.
Flushed.
Well, I mean, it gives us a lot of information on the projected schedules, these ESD updates. So we'll see just how much delay Artemis 2 gets. In terms of Artemis 2, the core stage, they got the all the tanks I think are structurally completed. They just doing like SOFI application, and the insulation on the liquid oxygen and hydrogen tanks. They're filling in the systems in the engine section and such, and they're really close in terms of completion on the forward skirt. So I think the whole critical path thing would be Orion. You have to look for delays there.
Well, currently, Artemis 2 Orion is set to be completed by April 2021, and Core Stage 2 will be completed by March 2022. So, Core Stage is still in the critical path for that mission.
Still in the critical path, and they said launches roughly September 2022 was the last we heard. Or the last I heard. So I guess that would be critical path, because they gotta get like 4 or 5 months of operations where they load it up and stack the vehicle and do umbilical tests and stuff. that you saw in that video you shared a while back on the whole stacking procedures.
So I have a
So,
question. I hadn't heard anything about. Is there ever any idea or possibility of them putting a different capsule beyond just Orion on top of the SLS?
what capsule would they even put though?
I
Yeah.
mean, obviously there's the what was it? The Starliner that's similar in size. Doesn't have the same capabilities to be able to go beyond low Earth orbit, but I just don't know if they have any plans for possibly making that work, or if they're just sticking to basically proprietary SLS Orion being the only real option.
Imagine if they make some sort of Orion Block 2 for like Mars missions.
They have the whole payload user's guide or manual they
Hmm.
had, and they could fit like bigger and bigger payloads. Like on the whole cargo missions, I think they could fit like 8-meter payloads or potentially even larger than that. I just don't know the number. Orion, the reason why they want to launch it on SLS is it's because it's 5 meters and it's gonna be very heavy, and you have to have that all that kick to TLI and all that stuff. So if they want to launch a different capsule, it's the question is why don't they just launch it on a different rocket?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, plus SLS was basically designed to fly with Orion on top.
Hmm. And then, I mean, Falcon Heavy and Crew Dragon. Um, I don't know if it could make it to TLI, but it's definitely not designed for deep space. That's for sure.
Correct. I'm trying to think of other ways that NASA could help justify this new launch system for something
Yeah,
other than just a very specific purpose. So it seems
they're trying to get
like it's
the
good. It's going to have to be short lived, or they're going to have to do drastic changes to make it a viable option for other types of missions.
yeah they're trying to
I mean,
justify it
like,
with the Europa Clipper and lander missions, and then the interstellar probes they were looking at in the studies.
I think like the only problem with SLS is that there aren't many things that require it because it's
Hmm.
like a super heavy launch vehicle, and even heavy launch vehicles have a tough time finding contracts.
Yeah, I mean, look at Falcon Heavy. It's extremely capable. It's more than almost anyone needs for any kind of contract work for getting something into orbit or beyond.
It's
I
like
think SLS and other vehicles will become more useful in the 2020s when like the moon is like a super big deal and like everyone's just going there or whatever. Well, not everyone, like a lot of people.
well, once they find that helium-3, everyone's gonna be going after it.
Have you guys ever seen the movie Moon?
Moon?
Yep. Oh, you guys gotta watch it. It's a pretty good little. It was a little independent film, but it's all about mining helium-3 off of the
I thought
moon.
you were
And
gonna talk about the Iron Sky with the helium-3 mine.
oh no. But I'm trying to think. I think it might be on Netflix.
Have you guys ever seen For All Mankind?
No.
It's
Oh,
like
I,
this
I heard
TV.
about it.
It's like this TV show where like it's in a parallel universe where the Soviets beat America to like the moon race. So they're like escalating it to like a race for a base on the south pole of the moon where there's water.
Hmm. What's that one called?
For all mankind, he said.
For All
Yeah.
Mankind. Okay.
They just found water ice actually in 2009. Wouldn't be surprised if they found like other chemical components, organic molecules. Imagine they found organic molecules on the moon.
Imagine they found oil.
You know, they might actually find organic molecules because of how the moon collided or was formed from the collision with the Earth
Yeah.
during the early stages of life. Maybe.
The issue is where you'd be able to find any of that kind of
Yeah.
stuff still intact. If it's, I mean, anywhere near the surface, it's just going to get completely baked away into something unrecognizable as organic material.
You'd you'd have to search for like the building blocks of amino acids. It wouldn't be very conclusive, definitely, but it would be interesting, kind of like what they did with Enceladus.
Hmm.
If you remember, they were talking about how they found the building blocks for amino acids in the gases from the ice plumes.
Yeah, the venting that was happening.
Yeah, from the Cassini mission, they discovered that. So that's pretty interesting. And they just announced that like last September.
Yeah, it's crazy how much of a surprise that was. Nobody expected that.
So now you have Europa and Enceladus to study.
Yeah, in many ways, Enceladus is looking more enticing now. Europa has always kind of been at the forefront, but because of those geyser plumes that they discovered, Enceladus is looking pretty
Yeah,
enticing.
and then you can launch your probe or to like land on it with SLS. That's kind of like your justification that you were asking for earlier.
Yeah, I'm very excited for those types of missions.
Okay, they said
Whole new problem
Artemis
set.
1. Segments ready to ship. Plan to ship by March 2020. Warmer weather to ship from Utah.
Hmm.
So, I'm not sure how much warmer they could get, though, because this was back in late October, so won't be really that warm. Even in March is my concern. Not that they needed that early, though, because they've still got critical path mission, parts of the mission getting delayed.
Someone popped in and said they had a question.
Theoretically, Orion can hold up to 6 crew, but only at low Earth orbit, where it would presumably go to the ISS. At lunar orbit, it wouldn't have enough life support for 6 crew for that long. That's what David said.
Yeah, and realistically, I don't. There's no benefit to having more crew going to lunar orbit anyway. If you think about it, you really just need the bare bones.
Not until they hopefully in the future they'll amp things up with the whole Artemis program. They said they wanted to get a surface acid in on Artemis 8 with a cargo SLS mission. So you know maybe you can justify that in the later portion of the 2020s when there's more of a race for setting up bases on the moon or anticipation for that.
Yeah, I definitely think that's going to be quite a bit out, though.
Did anyone read the AA2 flight test results? They said they were scheduled to finalize on November 20th.
I did not read that.
We'll have to look it up on NTRS then. Yeah, I'm just scrolling through ESD trying to find the Green Run page.
The only thing someone popped in and asked about Starship, I think it's cool. I can't wait to see it happen, but I think it's going to have the same problems of kind of what we were talking about. It's going to be hard to fulfill contracts because who's going to need that much going up there? Aside from, like, you look at what NASA's doing, of course they need some pretty heavy payloads into orbit, but they already have their own system that they're developing. So
yeah, they were trying to fund it with the whole Starlink thing they're doing. Not sure how well that's going to work.
I think maybe we can see cargo for Starship in the near future, but they haven't really been working on a crewed version yet, I think.
A crude version of Dragon? Or
no, I think he's talking about Starship.
Yeah, Starship.
Yeah.
I mean, they had that whole thing where they blew up the prototype, so I don't think they're gonna do it for a while.
Yeah, I mean that was like a weird. People kind of blew that out of proportion, kind of blowing things up.
Yeah.
It was a pressure test, so people read into it differently than how they probably should have. It was never going to be a flight-worthy vehicle, and they were just testing to see how their new welds were working with the new materials.
Oh, was that the whole test with the booper? Or the
It was the one shortly after they did their press release where they actually unveiled Starship or whatever.
Oh,
And
yeah, that's the actual.
I don't I think it was
Mark 1.
Mark 1. Was it their
Yeah,
Mark
it
1
was
that
Mark
they
1.
did? Yeah, that was just they decided to just pressurize the hell out of it and see when the seals broke.
Yeah, that wasn't the best idea though. When you're trying to get it to launch to 20 kilometers was their plan for the flight test. And now,
Yeah, but that's gonna be Mark 3 though, right? I think, or is that?
I think that was
I
Mark
don't
1
remember.
actually. Yeah.
They keep shifting things around, so I'm not entirely sure what
But
their
now they
timeline
have
looks
to
like.
scrap Mark 1. They have to scrap Mark 2 because they did the same thing with the welds, and they're gonna be pretty faulty. Mandalorian says I couldn't hear my voice in the podcast.
We heard you though, so
Here, look, I haven't muted on my end. I think. Let me turn them up.
yeah, that's how I heard his question about Starship.
Yeah, I turned them on, so that should be good.
Testing.
You're good.
Yep, I can hear you.
So they had to
I
switch
mean,
Mark
the
3.
nerd in me is interested in Starship, but I don't think it's necessarily going to become what Elon wants it to be.
Yeah, so wrapping things up here, before we close off for the night, we have the pictures here in the center of the screen. We've been displaying them. These are all things that have happened in the last 2 weeks or so. You had on the first, we had the rollout to the Building 110 where they had to do the operations with the covers and signing it over to NASA, taking it off the roll rings. Then you had it roll out to the actual barge on the 8th. You had the picture of the heat shield right there from the 9th. Yeah, roll out right there from Building 110. Or I think that's rolling in, actually. And then on the 10th, they had the astronaut class graduate. And then on the 12th today, we actually had the Pegasus barge leave. There's a picture of that from Reddit, from the r/NASA subreddit.
And then, of course, the astronaut graduation. Did anyone see how many applicants they had for that class?
No.
So they graduated 13, and they originally had 18,000 applicants for that class. So they whittled down from 18,000, most of which, of course, were never even selected to go beyond the application process, and then whittled it down to 13. So that's a pretty impressive accomplishment.
Originally
That's a lot
it
of
was
competition.
14. Originally it was 14, but one of them dropped out. The
And
one
they
that
pulled a
dropped
Deke
out was like
Slayton.
a. The one that dropped out was like this former SpaceX employee. He dropped out for personal reasons.
Yeah, I remember that was how long ago was that?
Like 2018.
Yeah, I remember he had. I don't remember what the reason was. He did like a little press conference and talked about it, but
Yeah, so they're down to 13 of them now.
Such a very lucky number.
yeah.
7.
Considering everyone's always superstitious about that kind of stuff in the space program.
Apollo 13, Cursed Apollo.
Reminded that under Constellation, the first Orion mission to the moon would be Orion 13.
Actually, I think I have the ESD here. Where is it? From the day of the ESD. 30. Okay, so one last thing we're gonna show to the stream. I'm gonna pull up the Green Run Run slide that I posted a while back. If I can find that.
Take your time.
It was the 31st, was it? Yeah, it was on, like, Halloween, was it? No, it was on the 30th, actually. So, 30. There it is. So, Artemis 1 Green Run. Let me get that saved.
Also posted on the channel.
Yeah, I got it right here. It's fine. We have a whole library of plans and diagrams. Slide. Okay. So let me add it here. Add file. Edit checklist. I don't know if you can see it, but right there is
The
the
frick
Green
is
Run
that?
slide from October 2019, and that's the schedule, as far as we know right now, of the order of events as to what's going to happen with the whole Green Run. So we're
I think that guy on Reddit, who's like a guy at Dennis, he like leaked
yeah.
information about the dates. He said that the nominal date for the fire is July 31st, and that they're expecting it to arrive at the VAB on November 11th.
November 11th, they said at the KSC.
Yeah, so far it seems that NASA is publicly saying October, but realistically it's like November 11th.
Okay, so we have core stage shipped to Stennis. That's right now actually, and then core
Yeah.
stage load into B2 test stand. That'll be 2 days after that. Modal test complete. What's that? Does anyone know?
Nah, I don't know.
Yeah, a lot of this is new stuff. Vehicle power on checks complete. They're gonna power on the stage for the first time. All right, I think they already powered it on in MAF.
Modal testing is the vibration testing.
Oh, okay. And then main propulsion system and engine leak functional checks. They're obviously gonna have to get the whole plumbing done to the engines before they do that. Hydraulics, thrust vector control, safety checks, and then they're gonna do a whole wet dress before the hot fire in July, and then refurbishment could happen. I think it was, what was it?
4 months.
Yeah, they said they could happen. They could like move the refurbishment to the Space Center to Kennedy if they really wanted to.
Apparently they have like red lines covering some of the core stage, and
Mhm.
once they remove those red lines they'll put flight cameras.
Oh, that's interesting. So they'll have like a lot of the flight cameras, like the
Indeed.
Saturn V, but like on board the vehicle.
Well, it makes some pretty good footage.
Yeah, and then they have flight cameras on the tips of the solar arrays for Orion. So it'll be like moon selfies.
Yeah. Ultimate selfie stick.
Yep. 4 GoPros connected
Better
by
than
Wi-Fi.
Apollo's.
144p.
It's not
Low res
144p, is
downlink.
it? It's 1080p. 144p would be pretty bad. then Green Run final health and status check, and then ship to KSC in November, they said. And stacking, the whole stacking sequence, I think we should show that right here actually. Let me find it. Plans and diagrams. David wants us to keep it going for another hour and 10 minutes so he can join. Oh yeah, there's a lot of good diagrams here. Computer renders. This one's with the whole B2 stand. Woog, do you have that video?
The video of the procedures.
Yeah, with the stacking ops.
Let me find it.
Actually,
Woogie.
I think I got it right here. I'll get it on in a few minutes, and then I'll pull up some more diagrams, and we'll go through a few of them. Okay, the B2 stand one.
Where is Stennis?
Stennis is right up the Pearl River, so it's like just east of the Louisiana-Mississippi border. It's about 40 miles upstream, I think, is what they said.
Oh.
There's the diagram, so let me open up original save.
So I just posted like the video link.
Nice. I'm just changing out the slide here. And then we can get this one right here. Okay.
Hey Sam.
Yeah?
If we just put the video on like the stream or something, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm getting that up in a couple minutes.
Okay.
So we have this green run slide right here. Let me get rid of that.
That's outdated.
This one right here is outdated. Oh yeah, it's
Well,
got the whole white
the
thing.
video is just
No, no.
outdated from showing what the stacking procedures should still be roughly the same though.
Yeah, it's
Oh.
they don't like to give us new stuff. That's how it works. But there's,
They spent X amount of money to get this one, so they're gonna drive it into the ground.
You can see the multiple axis levels they have in the structure. This is an old image of B2, I think. Do they have more structures around it now, or how does it work? Because I know they did the whole B2 construction, and they redid the whole test stand for the core stage, and then they tested it out like the fitting with Pathfinder a while back.
What's weird is when you see them recovering the capsule out of the water, they like had another one that was in that ship that was collecting it, so they're just like collecting these capsules in there.
There's like multiple SLS capsules.
Yeah.
Or,
Excuse
Orion
me,
capsules.
SLS
Orion's,
capsules.
yeah.
Orion, I'm sorry, Woog. I'm sorry. Okay, you mix these things up on the air.
I'll feed you to the dogs.
Wow,
Okay,
Woog
I'm-
is shy to talk. Huh.
Yeah, I'm just getting this up right
Okay,
here.
Zoomer.
And I'll pull up the media source. Local file.
I misheard that as meat source.
You're gonna love the music on this one.
Is that the International Space Station?
Talking about in the background.
Or should I turn off the music on the video, or like have an ad for you?
I don't know. I have it muted so I don't hear duplicates of what we're saying.
Oh, okay. I'll just turn it down for now. So there's the aft exit cone mate.
Do
It's
not
scheduled
hump.
sometime later this year, before they actually start stacking the boosters. It's like right before summer is, I guess, the ETA on that. And then they'll just slowly stack those booster segments one by one. Those forward assemblies, I believe they already have them in place, and they're pretty much in storage, or from what I can tell. They have the little areas where they have the solid motors that fire them away from the vehicle during separation at the top.
I think they have both of the aft exit cones at
Yeah, they have both
KFC.
of them. And
This video is pretty neat, not gonna lie.
then they have both of the nose cones and forward skirts, maybe? I don't remember. Core stage is completely assembled. They just need to do the plumbing. Launch vehicle stage adapter, it's all done. ICPS is in storage. We can pull up the collage if we need to. And then they'll stack the ICPS on top, and then they have the whole Orion, I think, goes in one big chunk.
The dawn of Orion.
Yeah, and then they put the OGIF panels together like right before they do stacking operations of Orion. So like those aren't going to be put together for a while. Like, up until the very end.
I just posted the video link for the Ares 1X one. Sorry, I mean Ares 1.
Oh, they had the
So
The
they
same
made an
design.
animation of, yeah.
Yeah, and you see those umbilical tests they have to do. And they have to do wet dress rehearsals and all those tests at the pad, similar to what Mobile Launcher was doing this summer, actually. Except they'd have to do it much faster. Mobile Launcher spent like all summer and fall on the launch pad and actually doing those tests. And I think they still got more tests to do in the VAB right now, up until booster stacking. And then they got to test again with the vehicle to make sure all the umbilicals are working right before launch.
Honestly, the number one thing I'm looking forward to this year is just seeing the core stage inside the VAB.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we got a sneak peek of that with Pathfinder in September.
Remember that
And there's the launch
image
of...
where I photoshopped the core stage onto the ET?
Oh, yeah, that one. Yeah, that's in the fortnightly review.
Fortnite.
Yeah.
Here
Orion
comes the collection of
transfer.
capsules.
So this is all the stuff they're doing after the launch, and yeah, that's it. 2013
So-
graphics.
So do you wanna also show like the Ares 1 one?
We can go ahead and show Ares 1 if we wanna. I just pulled that one up because it was easier. Let's see. Woog, you have your hardware collage, correct?
Yes.
Do you have a? Can you link it to me right now so I can like show it?
Okay, let me find.
Yeah, so Woog here, he actually puts together all of the hardware for like Artemis missions, so like you'll be able to see the state of the hardware from whenever he made it, and I believe he made one just a few days ago for Artemis 1. Ares 1 was pretty bad in terms of a launch vehicle. Ares 1 was just an SRB and a dummy second stage for their 1X launch, and Ares 1 had a bunch of issues with the abort system. In case they had like an explosion, it would tear the parachutes up, and then they had like the recontact with the second stage. It was pretty bad. So it's no surprise they canceled Constellation for this.
So I just posted the collage.
Yeah, let me get that.
When
Are
did
you currently
Constellation start
2004?
Yeah,
and
Constellation
canceled?
took a while.
Constellation got canceled in 2010. It was supposed to have its first crewed flight in 2015.
That's pretty bad. But then
And it was
again,
supposed to land people on the moon in
yeah, it was the moon. I thought they were like gonna go straight from Mars for a moment there.
Okay, correction. It went in 2019.
2019. And what were they gonna
On
launch
Orion
it on?
13.
Wow, that was a decade ago.
They said they were gonna launch the Ares 5 in 2018.
They were gonna do a test flight for Ares 1, I mean Ares 5 in 2018 called Ares 5Y.
Okay,
I
everyone,
don't know why they keep using that.
feast your eyes. This is, let me pull it up here. This is the Artemis 1 hardware collage, courtesy of Woog here. A lot of these things have been done for a while now. ICPS, I believe, was done in like 2016 and handed over to EGS or whatever. They just put it in storage, and then the launch vehicle stage adapter has been done for years. Crew module adapter has been done for, or that's the Orion stage adapter.
I think launch vehicle stage adapter was finished in 2018.
Yeah, so these things were finished years ago. The stage adapters and ICPS is easy because they make those all the time. They're just the
What is thermal?
second stage. Sorry.
What
anyone?
is thermal? What is thermal balance test?
A thing.
What thing?
Balance
Thingy
test?
majiggy.
I think it has to do with the fact that they cool and heat the ship differentially based on where it's receiving sunlight and which side is in shade.
Yeah.
So it's utilizing the
Photosynthesis.
Because they have to do a
Well,
barbecue
yeah.
roll.
yeah. So they use like the radiators to help dissipate the heat, and then they try to transfer it to the cold side of the ship if they need it.
5-segment solid rocket boosters. We're waiting on those to ship. They're coming in slowly. Crew service module is in the vacuum chamber as we speak. Launch abort system is just kind of sitting there waiting for stacking and in core stages. Or it should be at Stennis right now. It's been shipping all day.
Okay, should we show the Ares 1 thing?
Sure, go ahead.
Yes.
Let me get that set up.
Because, like, I already posted, like, the link a few minutes ago, I think.
Yeah, let me get that. Ares
God,
1 was amazing.
needs more pixels.
Like, Ares 1 was really cool, the whole design.
The stick.
Yeah, the stick rocket, and then they had a little bulge at the top for a
Bulge.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looked kind of
Flushed.
questionable.
It looked like a pencil.
That's what made it like look so good, because it was just one stick.
It looked like a pencil with one of those like rubber grip things you can put on it.
Yeah. And then it turns out if you make a pencil for a rocket, it doesn't really work well.
because it's too thin.
Okay, I'm.
What would be annoying about having that single engine design is having no real roll capacity. So depending on how the rocket ended up rolling, it could be differential G forces for a potential crew.
Oh yeah, and what were the G forces on Ares One, anyways? Because it was just one
Oh,
solid
it would have to be pretty
bad.
High.
pretty high because those SRBs are just like I'm saying, it's on or off.
Yeah, and once you turn them on, you can't turn them off. So
No.
it's
For so in like 2011 or something, NASA was like beginning like the whole commercial crew thing.
okay.
Uh,
We
and
have the Ares One playing right now. So if you want to watch it, and
amazing animation.
yeah, remember Orion was a part of Constellation.
And good
They moved
CGI.
over to the whole program we know today, the Artemis program. They've reused the design since it was conceived in the 2000s.
Apparently, Lockheed Martin's original proposal for the crew exploration vehicle was just like a space plane or something. Then NASA was like, no.
I like how the humans look.
Yeah, they look pretty hot.
Wait, this isn't real life.
Flushed.
Yeah, real hardware and real RPSF. RPSF is actually ready for SLS. They certified it a while ago. That's gonna be where they put the booster segments together.
Technically, if you think about it, the SLS side boosters are just Ares 1 first stages.
Hmm.
Yeah. So you have two Ares 1 first stages on top of your core stage.
How long until a core stage arrives at tennis? Like tennis?
Stennis?
Yeah,
Let me check on the latest word on that while this plays.
sucks.
Should we like have the music on?
I have it
Cause
really
like there's a
quiet.
lot of blank space.
I have the music in the video really quiet right now. They lost it on marine traffic a while ago. The escort vessels, the tugs. Hold on. We got something. Ladies and gentlemen, I am proud to announce at this time that
We got him.
the craft is right next to the test stand, I think.
Flushed.
So I'll just post that in Mikeless.
People. No sound emoji.
That could be a different ship, but I think that's probably Pegasus.
Imagine if they do like some huge parade for like every single milestone.
Yeah, That would be kind of cool if they did that. Yeah, and then they have a different tug going the other way, away from Stennis, so that could that might actually be the tugs that brought it over there. They could be done for today.
I think I'm just gonna leave now since I'm running out of charge.
Bye. My bad.
5%.
Okay, so
My
3
power
hours
is running
ago.
low and my volume is. Ugh.
It got there 3 hours ago.
Oh, very cool.
So yeah, now we know where the B2 stand is. And then they'll unload it. They'll be unloading it on Tuesday, I think. So we should be well on our way into Green Run. They had all this planned for Ares 1. Several years of plans they threw out, and most of it is gone.
Rip. What is electromagnetic interference and electromagnetic
My guess
field?
my guess is that it's like the stuff from the sun, like the X-rays and everything. They're trying to measure how that would affect their radios and communications, electronics on board, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, especially with digital systems now as opposed to the analog they were
Yeah,
using for
I mean
the previous Saturn type missions.
they had a lot of, they have a lot of transistors now. They barely had any computing power on the lunar module.
Mm-hmm.
Ares 1X.
Hot design.
Oh, were they gonna recover the? Oh my God, they were they were gonna
Yeah, they
recover
were.
the booster. Yeah. And then they would take it through the really bad refurbishment process. It took a while actually.
Yeah,
For the
saltwater
shuttle.
is bad news.
Yeah, every time they try and refurbish one of those boosters, it's a headache.
Yeah, just yet another one of those things that occurred with the shuttle not really living up to its reusability like it was originally being touted.
One of the reasons why they don't have parachutes on the SLS solid rocket motors is that it takes so much time and effort to reuse these, and that you have to recover it, and then you're going at a faster speed, so then you have to deal with all the re-entry stuff, and you might as well throw it away at that point.
Yeah.
What launch complex will Artemis 1 will launch?
39B, was it?
Yep.
39, like always.
It's historic.
It just has so much infrastructure already in place. I mean, yeah, they have to change things, but so much of the large infrastructure is already in place, and they can just kind of modify from there.
Yeah, it's easier than building a new pad. That's a beautiful landing.
The hydro dampening, right, where they just blast water under the rocket to help dampen the noise and vibrations, and all that stuff's already there also. So.
Oh yeah, with the sound suppression test they had earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't look like much, but it's like 1 million gallons.
Oh, it's an absurd amount of water, very quick.
Yeah, just dump it on the Amazon. And we'll show that image of the space center from marine traffic. We'll show that on there with the core stage, or what we think is the core stage on the Pegasus barge. Okay, slideshow, properties. Okay.
I like how this podcast is 1 hour long.
Yeah, we're just waiting for most of it and like trying to pull up images.
I think you were asking earlier, Mandalorian, if that was ISS in the background. Is that what you were asking?
Oh, with the
Yeah. So
background, that's
yeah, it's
Gateway.
actually Lunar Gateway.
I
One
was
one po- one
joking.
pos- one possibility.
So there's marine traffic right now. That little blue ship in the middle right there. We think that's Pegasus because it's right next to the B2 stand. So that's pretty much our confirmation that CS1 is there.
We should have used tweets.
Yeah, looks like it's at Stennis. Okay. Stuff that's coming up in the next few days. Other than core stage, probably I don't know. There's not much going on at this time, really, compared to when they were putting the last parts on for the core stage with the engine section.
Yeah, right now it's like cloudy and 59 degrees Fahrenheit at
At Stennis.
Stennis. Yeah.
Okay, so our satellite pass with the Sentinel satellites, they have 10-meter imagery. We were gonna go ahead and plan to get a picture of Pegasus, but it looks like we probably won't be able to get it tomorrow because of the cloudy conditions. And it won't be a while until we get a picture of the stage in the stand.
Clouds ruin everything.
Yeah, it's been really bad weather.
Cancel weather.
Yes, cancel weather. Delayed.
They had to wait
I do
for.
astrophotography and I haven't been able to do it because the clouds have been insane here.
Oh yeah, it's like all the moisture. I think.
Is it like raining?
Okay, so I know they had to wait for the good weather actually to roll out the stage. They actually had to wait like a week until they got the clear skies to roll it out. That's a pretty bad delay.
What if we played the asteroid redirect mission?
Asteroid redirect mission was a bad idea.
Apparently,
It has-
they're planning to like use the asteroid redirect probe as a Mars vehicle. I have no idea how that would work.
Yeah, I don't see how they would be able to do anything. with
Can
it.
we please play the Dawn of Oron?
Oron.
Oron?
How to say it?
Orion.
That's
Orion.
The guy literally says it in the video.
Can we have a picture here of Pathfinder at Stennis? Let me put that up.
Mars Pathfinder.
Core stage
No,
Pathfinder.
not that Pathfinder.
We don't talk about Mars Polar Orbiter or the lander they had at the poles they were planning that burned up. Okay, save that. Okay, this right here. This is the Pathfinder. When it was being unloaded, I think, from the Pegasus barge. That's pretty much how it's gonna be like. They're gonna pull it out onto the cement there, and then they're gonna take that crane and they're gonna pick it up and then move it over into that uh, chassis or uh, framework there on the right side, and that's where they're going to be able to get all their access levels so they can get the better vertical access of the vehicle, and that's where they're going to be able to do their closeout operations with the hydrogen tank and the plumbing to the engines.
60 degrees.
I mean, really, all the eyes are on Green Run now. It's all on the critical path. Orion, we don't get to see too much, but it's still testing. It's gonna be another like 60 days or so before they get it back to the Space Center, to the Cape, and then they load the panels on there and close it out and turn it over to EGS sometime in May, I think, is the projection. And
We won't see Orion in 60 days.
in 60 days, when is it?
What?
When are they gonna bring Orion back?
I don't know.
I thought it was like less than 60 days, maybe. I don't know. We don't know the whole details on the testing because the testing is notorious for like ambiguity, which we saw during the final integration and functional testing of the core stage at MAF. It took longer than expected, and they missed the December 10th deadline they set in August, and then they missed the Christmas deadline they set at the beginning of December. They missed that, and they eventually got it out sometime in January. Does anyone have any questions for us to wrap up here?
Could I play the Dawn of Orion at the end of this video?
Sure thing, I guess.
Okay, one more question. What if SOS was covered in steel?
In steel, it's a lot heavier. So like, I don't see why they would do it in steel. But like, why would you want a heavier material that is unproven when the strength of what are they making out of? Like, what are they making SLS out of? The aluminum, was it? I don't even remember. But I know it's lighter than steel. And they've tested the tanks to breaking, like with the structural hydrogen tank article, they got 260% loads for several hours.
Yeah,
hours.
jeez.
Yeah, why would you want to switch it out to a heavier material that would severely impact the amount of delta V you can get out of that vehicle? It just doesn't make sense.
To flex.
Yeah, I kind of think that question's because of what they're doing with Starship and the heavy launch and whatnot. But they're starting from the ground up of trying to do something very different. So to them, the way they've started planning for the stainless steel that they've developed actually gives them assistance in other means than just structural strength. It's also supposed to help with heat reduction and dissipating different loads and whatnot. So they're starting from scratch on that, and it still is unknown if it's actually going to end up being viable.
What if we rename SLS to Delta 5
Yes.
or Delta, V?
5. When are they gonna give like SLS a better name?
Never.
Like never? They're just gonna keep it like that?
Aries 5.
Aries 2.
They could have rolled out SLS to Building 110 on New Year's Eve, but they chose not to. So they had to roll it out a final assembly area in the new decade.
Apparently, to get the core stage completed on time, they had to also like get everyone at Michoud, even the guys working at CS2.
Yeah, they had to pull in people from other teams, and they were doing 3 shifts at a time, actually. Towards the end of it, they didn't want to get people stuck out there at 8 p.m. on New Year's Eve, so they pushed the rollover to Building 110. They pushed that over. They pushed to the next day, and then they got back to work at 10 a.m. the next day and moved it to 110. And then it was a week after that they got it to the barge.
Those are some crazy hours.
Yeah, they had people working round the clock over the holidays. Props to them, because I remember NSF was saying that it was likely going to be mid-January, and they could delay it like even further than that. And then the next day after that, they rolled it over to 110.
Speaking of 110, 110 is also the place where they manufactured the liquid hydrogen and LOX tanks back in 2017
And they're
for the
still
Artemis 1
manufacturing
mission.
them for Artemis 2.
Artemis 2.
Yeah. And they're gonna soon work on Artemis 3.
Also, a reminder that work on CS1 was delayed by a year in 2016 due to bad wells.
Yeah, they messed up the welds on that. So it took a lot of learning to get them there. And now that they know how to do the process once, they're gonna do it twice, and then each time they do it, it gets faster.
Right.
So like, by the 4th iteration is what the officials are saying. Is when they're gonna reach like peak efficiency when producing those core stages. And then they also use that vertical weld tool right there.
So according to like my insider guy, they're expecting by CS3 they're gonna get 1 core a year.
1 core a
although
year.
he is a bit skeptical about that.
It's gonna be difficult because it's all this new hardware is unproven.
Yeah.
CS
Also,
for
like
when?
the like welding infrastructure for like SLS wasn't even there until 2014.
Yeah, so they couldn't even get started on it. It was like an empty factory.
Yeah, like back in 2013, I think they'd like made a few barrels, but that's it.
So the vertical weld tool they actually use that for forward join. When do we think that's going to happen with Core Stage 2?
Well, it depends on what is Core Stage 2 up to?
Core Stage 2,
Stuff.
they're still the last we heard of it, they moved it to SOFI application with the liquid hydrogen, and oxygen tank was already
Actually, I think like the last time we heard of it, they were doing like proof leak testing.
And when was that?
October? I don't know. Or November?
Or November. Yeah, we haven't heard much. We didn't even get a news article from NASA. We didn't even get one when they finished the liquid hydrogen tank welding.
I think we got a news article from. I think we got a news article from NASA when they did the proof leak testing. I think, but they didn't do one for when they finished the welding.
Yeah, I don't remember that. In terms of, yeah, they're not gonna have a docking hatch on Artemis 2, are they?
I mean, there's no need to.
I guess, but it's like they're kind of testing out their system right away. Like right on when they're gonna need it on Artemis 3, they'll
If
be
I
testing it out.
remember correctly, the Orion docking port is the same one as Crew Dragon and the other ones.
Oh yeah, it's international docking standards, so it probably won't be a problem. If it is a problem on Artemis 3, that's gonna be bad.
I mean, I doubt it will, because like it's already proven.
Mm-hmm. Artemis
Plot twist.
3 Gateway and CLPS, Commercial Lunar Payload Services. Then they delayed a procurement of one of the landers.
It was Viper. I don't think it's part of Commercial Lunar Services. I think Viper was like the lunar prospector thing.
Oh, so like they're still gonna land the Peregrine lander. When are they gonna? When are they gonna do that?
I think the first landers are gonna land in 2021 or something.
Yeah, and the Peregrine is gonna launch on the Vulcan, I think. First payload.
Imagine lunar dream chaser.
That'd be pretty cool, but I don't know.
Imagine watching Apollo 18.
I try not to.
Good.
Apollo 20 is to like Tycho Crater. We need a Tycho Crater mission in Artemis.
Nice.
In For All Mankind, there's like more than Apollo 23 or something.
Apollo 23.
Apollo
Or like-
6-9.
I think for season 2 they're doing like Sea Dragon.
Sea Dragon, I don't know. What's the whole deal with Sea Dragon? Why do people like it so much?
Because
Just
it's
because
thick.
it would have been crazy to see.
It's swole.
But it's like inefficient though.
Yeah, but it looks cool.
Yeah.
I think that's like the only reason.
And just the fact that it's kind of like a submarine launched ballistic missile. It'd just be kind of cool to see
To
that
the
thing
moon
rise out of the
and
water.
Mars.
Mm-hmm.
It's one big submarine.
Or a
launched missile.
rocket in a lava launch pad.
So
Well-
are we just gonna wait for David to show up?
Could I play my 2 videos?
We're gonna probably
please?
like close up right before he comes. Sadly.
Yeah, actually, I gotta jet out of here. But if I come back and you guys are still on, I'll hop on too. But for now, I gotta head out.
I'm going
Okay,
to
bye.
play it now.
But thanks for having me on. It was a blast, and
Yeah.
I'll try to see if it works out with my schedule in the future too, because this has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, so like Mr. Fu, you work Army space operations?
Yes, correct.
Okay, well Mr. Fu, he's one of our IRL aerospace members on the server, so thank you for being on here with us. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, it was a blast. Thanks a lot for having me.
We'll
I'll
see
talk to you all
next
later. Bye.
I guess we're gonna wrap things up here, Woog.
Yeah.
We're-
So Mandalorian play the Dawn of Orion.
yeah, we can go ahead and play that now.
Could I do the asteroid redirect first?
The Dawn of Orion.
Okay, fine. Just let me.
It's pretty loud. I'm gonna turn them down actually.
Rainbow board.
25.
Flight lock in. T
20,
minus 20 seconds.
15,
Rope ignition.
The
10,
igniters have been lit.
9, 8, 7, 6,
5, 4.
3.
Oh, it cut out.
Space exploration.
We just heard space exploration and that's it.
Replay it, I guess.
8, 7, 6,
6,
5, 4, 3,
3.
2, 1. And liftoff at
Dawn.
the dawn of Orion.
The of Orion.
A new era
of American space exploration. So that wraps up this episode,
That's
I
it
guess.
for tonight, I guess. Do we want to do this again 2 weeks from now or a month from now, or how is it going to work?
5 years, I'm joking.
Our next meeting.
Next week, I guess.
Next week? I was thinking like 2 weeks from now.
Fortnightly podcast.
Yeah, we'll just do it in conjunction with the updates that Luke has on his channel. You can check that out. It's called
Okay.
Starship Trooper. He posts videos on Artemis. It's in the recommended channels on my channel. Mandalorian.
What if...
I don't know if he has any channels. You can go ahead and plug them in here if you want.
His channel is Big Cat?
Yeah, you can find him in the comments on Luke's videos. You know, as per usual. Mr. Fu, I don't know about him. David Willis has a channel somewhere, I think. That's all for now. We'll just let these images cycle here of the last fortnight of progress on the Artemis program, which brings us one step closer to the Artemis 1 mission, Artemis 2 mission, and eventually Artemis 3 first landing on the moon in over half
so
a
what are we
century.
doing?
That's... Yeah, I'm wondering if Artemis 2 will launch by December. Because if they launch past December, that'll make it like the 50-year mark since Apollo 17. And that's core stage rolling out right there on the morning of January 1st.
What if beginning with next week, at the beginning, we just played the newest bi-weekly thing? Like premiere
Yeah,
in the
we'll
podcast.
just do that for every week from now on. But this has been our first podcast, and from all of us on the Artemis Discord server, signing off to you with all of our wisdom and knowledge from our insiders.
Could I do
Wisdom.
a closing song, please?
Mandalorian.
I have a bad feeling about this.
Okay. Let me,
It's not working.
It keeps cutting off. I think I'm just gonna head out now.
Alright, we'll just play the intro again, I guess.
And as we leave the moon, we leave as we came, and God willing, as we shall return.